Let's dive into this story. Strap in because it's a journey from what seemed like a minor marital disagreement to a full-blown unraveling of a life built together. This all started in what I thought was the safest place, our finances. My partner, let's call him David, and I are both in our early 30s, and we've been lucky. We live in a bustling coastal city where the cost of living makes your eyes water, but we've done well for ourselves. We each pull in a solid income, well into the six figures, and thanks to a combination of hard work and a windfall from my family, we own our home outright. No mortgage, no student loans, no credit card debt. We'd set up a system that for years felt like the pinnacle of modern equitable partnership. We'd sock away a huge chunk of our paychecks into savings and investments, and then we'd each get a generous monthly fun money stipend. This was our guilt-free cash for personal passions. David's money vanished like smoke every month, fed into his love for golf, those green fees, the latest driver, the weekend tournaments. My hobbies were cheaper. I found peace in long runs along the city waterfront and stress relief in baking. So my fun money account just sat there, growing quietly. Lately, I'd rediscovered my love for PC gaming, a passion from my college days that had fallen by the wayside. After saving for well over a year, I made a decision. I spent a chunk of my saved fun money, $5,000, on a breathtaking gaming rig. A powerhouse of a computer, an ergonomic chair that felt like a throne, a desk with a finish like still water. I was thrilled. David was apoplectic. He accused me of financial infidelity, a phrase that hit me like a slap. It made no sense. This was my money from our agreed-upon system. But the fight wasn't really about the money, was it? It was the first crack in the dam. A week later, the truth, or a version of it, seeped out. Over a tense conversation, he confessed he wasn't really mad about the computer. He was disappointed in me. While he was on a fast track to upper management at his firm, I was just a senior developer, content with my role and my salary, which, for the record, matched his. He wanted a wife who mirrored his corporate ambition. He also wanted a performance. He wanted gourmet meals waiting for him, the table set like a magazine spread, and me dressed not in my comfortable jeans and running shoes, but in heels and a dress, just to eat a Tuesday night dinner. The image he painted was less of a partner and more of a backdrop to his own success. The audacity of it sat in my gut, cold and heavy. I decided to run an experiment, not because I agreed, but because a terrible suspicion was dawning. This was a game with no winning move. That weekend, I played the part. I got a full salon transformation, I bought armfuls of fresh flowers from the market, and spent hours in the kitchen crafting a restaurant-quality steakhouse feast. I wore the lavender dress he loved. The reward for this exhausting performance? A lukewarm, "Thanks, it was tasty," and a peck on the cheek. The next day, for brunch, I did it all again. Another, "It's good." No help clearing a single plate. When I finally asked if this was the vision he had in mind, his response stole the air from the room. He said I was acting entitled for wanting credit for basic adulting. Then he dropped the bomb. He was being hard on me, he explained, because he'd realized he'd settled for a low-value woman. My brain short-circuited. What did that even mean? It meant I hadn't been a virgin when we met at 21. Let that sink in. 12 years together, 10 of them married. A fact he'd known and never once mentioned as an issue. We were college students, for heaven's sake. I'd had 2 serious relationships before him. And now, over a decade later, it was my foundational sin. He said this deficiency meant I'd have to make it up to him for life, that I didn't deserve his fidelity or equal respect, and that I was lucky he'd married me at all. Then, the coup de grace. He'd connected with someone at work. If I wanted to keep him, I'd better become perfect. The sheer, breathtaking cruelty of it was almost impressive. The man I'd built a life with was a stranger. I told him if that was how he felt, there was nothing here to keep. He said he'd gladly go to his girlfriend's place. Just like that. You know, hearing this back, it's wild how clarity comes only in the wreckage. If you're following along, maybe you saw the red flags before I did. What would you have done in my shoes? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to hear how this surreal story finally ends, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. This is just the beginning. The fog of shock lifted, replaced by a cold, focused clarity. I took a week off work. I hired a lawyer. I canceled our marriage counseling and booked a therapist for myself. When he came by with his girlfriend, a young woman named Chloe, to get his things, I was braced for a confrontation that never came. He was dismissive. She was quiet. The pieces started falling into place with grim efficiency. A text message confirmed Chloe was pregnant. His affair was much longer than he'd admitted. The golf weekends were lies. I packed his belongings myself, inventoried everything, and had movers take them away. I changed the locks, froze the joint accounts, and got a full medical checkup. I donated the bed we'd shared, the very furniture that had held the ghost of our marriage. I used my still healthy fun money fund to retain my lawyer and booked a spa weekend to just breathe. The legal process, thanks to our state's laws and his desperation to legitimize his new situation, moved with startling speed. I kept my grandmother's house, which was solely in my name, and my personal accounts. He took a larger share of our liquid assets, a trade I was willing to make for a clean, fast break and a guarantee of no future alimony. It was a price for my peace and my future. I thought that was the end of the chapter. Then Chloe reached out. She wanted to talk. Against my better judgment, my curiosity won. We met for an awkward lunch. She was very, very pregnant, and she was living in a completely different reality, one David had meticulously constructed for her. In his telling, I was a tragic figure, a high school dropout and recovering addict he'd rescued years ago, mentoring me for my GED. We were separated, he'd said, living platonically because he was too kind to throw a struggling addict out on the street. He'd told her he'd had a vasectomy, making her pregnancy a miracle. He'd painted himself as a saint and me as his burdensome charity project. The lies were so grandiose, so easily disproven, that I almost felt sorry for her. I showed her a photo of my grandmother and me in front of my house from years ago. I showed her my professional profile. The confusion and dawning horror on her face were real. She was a 24-year-old prodigy, yes, but also painfully naive, with no relationship experience to arm her against a man like David. She'd believed him because she wanted to. I left her with the truth and a wish for her safety, disentangling myself from the tragic web he'd spun. The final divorce papers are waiting for a judge's signature. The man I married used a forgotten fact from my past as a weapon, concocted an elaborate fantasy life to seduce someone else, and tried to reframe our entire marriage to avoid being the villain in his own story. His new life, with a baby on the way, and a partner now armed with disquieting truths, is his to manage.
As for me, I'm in my home, the one filled with my history. My state-of-the-art gaming setup sits in a room that's now purely mine. I'm learning, slowly, what it means to build a life without walking on eggshells, without performing a role. The road ahead is mine alone to design, and for the first time in a long time, that feels less like a sentence and more like a promise.